Welcome everybody, Steve Roach here at ActionGrid. This is our weekly overview webinar. This will be a recording and we do have about 17 people on the line here today. So a nice crowd, expect some good questions. So let's just do a very brief overview. This is the 20-minute variety of our webinar. So we try to go really fast and furious here. And not cover every feature, but leave that open to the question and answer session. So as we talk about ActionGrid, we always have to think, why did we build this grid tool? And I always go back to this. You know, there's all these people out there thinking they're blissfully using Salesforce, and they don't really know, you know, like this guy on the left, he's using a map. They don't really know they could be using GPS from their cell phone. They just don't know that there's something better. You know, and what we're trying to solve here is all of the big challenges of Salesforce list views. Without reading this list here, just for the recording, the list is long, to say the least. And then if it could get worse, it does with related lists. So the related lists, those lists that are on a record detail, are even worse than the list view, right? Because the users can't really do anything with those. Really, really limited in what they can do. So these are the challenges that we're trying to solve. Of course, some of the stuff can be done with Salesforce Reports, but our premise is that Salesforce Reports, very few people can write them. Maybe a larger subset could actually run them, and then they certainly don't look like Excel. And then the main thing is they are not actionable. So ActionGrid is trying to be both a better navigational tool, better data entry tool, but also it's a fantastic report writing tool. In fact, most ActionGrid users are abandoning all sorts of reports. So let's just do a quick demo. And then we'll leave it open to question and answers right at the end. Just a side note there, you can either chat your questions or use the webinar's question feature to submit your questions. I'll answer most questions at the end, but keep them coming as I'm demonstrating here, just so that we can keep the flow going. So let's just talk about ActionGrid real fast. So we don't want to waste a bunch of time belaboring the points that were just shown in the PowerPoint. Suffice it to say, we've got a better solution. So the first thing you might see here is color. We're bringing all of these Excel-like functions to ActionGrid to drive behaviors and really to keep people in the platform. And people keep challenging us, well, you got to do this to be more like Excel-like. And one of those features was to provide conditional color. So what you see here is if I hover over the yellow, and you probably have figured that out, like you know what to do when you get to a stoplight. You know what red means, yellow. You don't all know what yellow means, but you know green and red for sure. And so color can drive behavior. So right away, somebody coming to this spreadsheet view would know there's probably something that needs their attention here in the yellow or here in the red. And you can see as I hover over those, the actual name of the rule displays. So people get clever with their rule names and communicate messages to their users, such as, you know, guess what? If you don't call people, you probably don't close too many deals. And in this case, you know, my frustration is sales reps that don't update their opportunities and think they can close deals in the past. No posible, right? So what we can do here is with ActionGrid, everything is always in an edit mode if you decide to leave it that way. And we just simply change our dates to fix our dirty data. And then, you know, I certainly could go one by one and do that, but we're using an ActionGrid and we want that Excel-like experience. So any application, you know, most of the grid tools, they have some kind of mass update, but ActionGrid does it a little bit different. We actually offer 3 styles of mass update, one of which is the Excel style called fill down, which is a very simple way to take a piece of data like so and fill down like you would do in Excel, like a copy and paste. So very not that novel for Salesforce for sure, but here you can see that the data was changed. Now you'll see it's still yellow because in an action grid, we are going to make you save the data first, which also has the side benefit of letting you revert your change. Okay, so you can either save that or you can revert back like an undo. So very powerful kind of features. Now you also saw me do another feature where I lassoed data to select. So we're always trying to break that status quo in Salesforce. So we don't do anything the Salesforce way because we want to break that status quo. So while you're checking boxes the old Salesforce way, I've made you 700% faster in this case by selecting one click of a mouse versus your 7 to check some boxes. And then I, of course, did my fill down operator and I saved my data and I'm good. So some other things you might notice about ActionGrid would be things like the page size, so showing thousands of records per page. In fact, when we do a regular traditional mass update feature right here, the traditional mass update, we can update 50 million rows at once. So that breaks a big paradigm shift to be able to do that. Now, of course, you don't want to sit around while you're doing 50 million rows. So what'll happen is it'll send you an email when it's complete. And of course, people always ask, does it honor validation rules and things like that? And it indeed does. And it will send you those errors. Any rows that were failed will report in an error on the email. So let's look at some other things. Of course, to be Excel-like, we want to have sort of the filter paradigm here. So checkbox filters like you'd see in Excel. So very easy to uncheck fields, check fields, and so forth. When it comes to the date fields, we have some innovative things here where we show you all of the various date operators. So anything that you can kind of imagine is there in your date operators. So easy for the users to filter their data, much easier than out-of-box Salesforce. Then lastly, on the reporting side of things, even though conditional formatting is sort of a reporting kind of thing, what we can do here is our grids are very easy, even easier, I would say, to do reports than Excel. And what you do here is you just take a column and you can drag it into the grouping area, and maybe we'll take our close dates as well. And what we've got is an instant report. So what we've done is we've grouped this data by owner. We've got Ryan here and his deals. And you'll notice that with ActionGrid, anytime we see money, we already know what to do with money. Why wouldn't you count it? Everybody likes counting money. So we automatically do that. No work involved to do that. When you, if you decide you want to change the look of this report, a la an Excel pivot table, for instance, you might want to change this grouping and move this close date just a little bit over. And now you're going to have a totally different view of that world. Now we can look at November and see the salespeople that are closing deals in November. And of course, we've always got our subtotals going on there. So let me collapse that real fast. I realize I forgot to show you how to make a conditional formatting rule. And so what we do here is if we want to make a rule, just whatever we want, we go over here to the little, what we call the hamburger icon, and we'll just do conditional formatting. And it's very simple. You see I have some rules in place right now, but I'll just make a new rule here. And I'll call that rule Ryan, and we'll have deals owned by Ryan go a certain color. So we choose our field. We choose our color scheme. I'll just do purple versus white. That's a nice contrast. And just to show off, I'll make it bold and italic. And then we'll say wherever the owner is equal to or contains the word Ryan, then we'll apply that rule. And that will, of course, make the data change. Now, I can get crazy with this thing. I can make the conditional formatting apply to the entire row. That gets a little obnoxious, but it depends on what you're trying to convey, what you're trying to push to the users. New to ActionGrid, both in the conditional formatting and you might have seen this beta that we are releasing to the public, formula field editor. So just a real quick demo of the formula field editor and where we're going with that. That's going to let us add on-the-fly formulas to Salesforce. So I might use that for something like this, price increase, and I'm just going to actually choose the amount, and I can go and use these math functions if I want, but I'm just going to do this very easy. I can almost do that in my head, times 20%. So you know how people want to do kind of spreadsheet math and say, what if I increased my prices by 20%? So if I do that, you'll see here that we've got the value. I'm just not going to close that box, but we see we had a new column. Now you can kind of see, even though it's a little gray, that it's not formatted. So what we do need to do is help it like you do in Excel, right? You've got to format your column. So we got to tell it what the formatting is. And so I'll just choose as currency so that looks like a numeric value. Now what can you do with these formulas? So here's my little formula column. If I move it over here just so you can see. So what do you think you could do with this? Well, the natural thing that we're going to provide in the next version is the ability to take this column and mass update this column. So this is where we see really the use case of formulas, is being able to take a formula and apply that to some other column. But we want to be a little careful with that because people might screw up their math. And so just like Excel, what do they usually do? They make a column, check out all the mathematics on that, and then they usually paste that column into the destination cell. So that's how we'll probably implement mass updating with formulas. All right, so we've shown grouping, paging, so forth. Let's talk a little bit about the different access points of ActionGrid. So first off, you've seen me working here in this thing we call the multi-tab, and this is all done with a wizard. You just we don't have time to do the ActionGrid setup part of the demo today, but these are done with a little wizard. It just prompts you and says, what objects do you want? Now you'll also notice we're breaking down another annoying Salesforce status quo, and that is the one object, one view paradigm. With ActionGrid, what we can do is have the same object displayed multiple different ways, in fact, infinite ways. So instead of pulling down lists, this is status quo, and of course ActionGrid supports status quo, but what if we could put this more in the user's faces? You know, instead of having a big long list of views that have been defined, what if we flatten out that Salesforce paradigm and put them as tabs across? That will drive different behaviors because it'll be right there in their face, easy to find, you know, their opportunities or by stage or this month or whatever. And then with the multi-tab, you can have mixtures of objects as well. So there's no real limit to what you can put on a multi-tab. It's just all done with the wizard, and you just get prompted for the object. And if you want to, you can put a view hooked explicitly to the object. So here's some different views of that, my leads queue, maybe my task queue, and here we see some conditional color again. Great use case for conditional color on task management and case management. You know, marking my overdue calls. You know, clearly I'm late on these calls, and these calls aren't as late. They should have been done yesterday, and this is my call queue for today. Now, the one thing you will see, just on accident here, but you'll see that with ActionGrid, we have always in the editable state, so another great use case for task management. And then a great use case if you're importing email or you're just typing long notes with the reading pane concept. So let me turn off the reading pane just to show you how to turn it on. So reading pane, we took this idea from Microsoft Outlook, and we said, what if, you know, with task management especially, that's how it started, is what if we could read those long text fields, like email fields and things like this, in more of a reading pane, and take a look at it that way. These reading panes are also fully editable, so you can, if you're one of these rolling notes kind of guys, you can take your notes here and, you know, just make life a lot easier. You know, left another voicemail, for that person and move on, or you could certainly just come in here and complete the call and go about your business. Now, the other use case for reading panes is over here in a regular view again. So reading panes are not just for reading long text, but this is also where you would see your chatter feed. We do have, of course, our long text fields. So I could say, you know, send condolences for the big blowout last Sunday night, right in there. Or we could put here, we can see our related list. So we can put as many of the related lists as we want into this window, and those are all characteristics of the view. When we save the view, those are the characteristics. Of course, our reading pane showing related lists has all of the same attributes of the regular grids. So we can add in place, we can add some new products in here. You'll see that, you know, when I add the products, if I save and I've got rules in place, such as looking up the list price and doing the math on 11 times the list price is equal to the total price, all of those features work the same as if you had been down in the record detail. Okay, so that's the definition of reading panes. And I guess one last thing is, if you'll see this little plus sign, if you want more data, more related list data, we believe in allowing the users to configure their own grids if they like. Everything, of course, has an on-off switch, but we think that the users can handle this, being able to add a tab here, and then if they want to show their notes and quotes or whatever those related lists are, it's really quite easy with our field chooser to add fields. And if you need more fields or to diagram that, you just simply check boxes. So very easy to do. One last thing while I'm on the field chooser, and then we just got 2 minutes left, is our field chooser is very novel as well. Just the elegance of being able to sort by field types. You know, if you've ever had a big object and it's got all these currency fields and you don't know if it's called amount or total, right? You could be in the A's or the T's to do that. So all of these fields are sortable, searchable. You can even sort by the fields that are checked, that are already on the grid. It's a very elegant field chooser. We really want to focus on making that user experience nice. So I'll toggle off that field chooser. Now let's look at the last few things here, which is the other access points. So we talked about multi-tabs and putting tabs on top as Salesforce tabs. We also have the ActionGrid Explorer, which is the 1 minute after install kind of experience when you don't do any work whatsoever. You just cruise here and you can find any object that you have read access to. So you quickly, you know, choose accounts or something like that, and you'll get whatever your last view of accounts was, and you can see my reading pane was turned on for that. And then the other access point we see a lot of people using is if they want to go the more conservative route with ActionGrid and they want to run a regular old list view, you can always use ActionGrid as a verb. Okay, this is to ActionGrid my stale Salesforce list view data and turn it into a better user experience. So in this case, let me just choose a few of these rows just to make my point, and I want to ActionGrid those records so that I can do cool stuff with that. Okay, and what is that cool stuff we could do is down here on the Actions menu. So I didn't spend a lot of time today going through the Actions menu, but some of the things that we can do, you know, to batch add. Batch add is generic. It means we can batch add anything to anything. So it's always a the concept of adding data to from the parent record to a child. So who are the children of contacts? Well, tasks and campaign members, cases. A contact could have many cases, many opportunities, and so forth. And that is generic, so there's a little wizard to batch add stuff. Batch email is another one that people seem to be gravitating towards. We have a batch email where we can do, when you choose batch, it'll prompt you for an email template, Salesforce template, that is, to work with that. So what I want to do now is just quickly go into the last access point here, and we'll do the last part of our demo. We got 30 seconds left here. So the last access point would be using ActionGrid as a related list. So as a related list, what we're trying to solve is the problem of the stale old Salesforce related list. This, when we've converted this paradigm to a related list, an ActionGrid related list, that is, now we've got all of the value of an ActionGrid right here, including our reading panes and our multiple related lists underneath our reading panes right here, and we can add in place and edit in place and all of that goodness that we do here. So I'll pause there for just a second, and I'm going to keep my action menu open here. You'll notice that I'm lassoing data and then right-clicking, because we do support that as well. And I'll leave that open while I start to answer some of the questions so that often people will look at the actions menu and ask me to demo a particular thing that I did not have time to demonstrate in our fast 20 minutes. All right, so can you create views? So one of the questions is, can you create views or reports with data from two different objects? And so indeed, if I answer the question, if I think I am understanding the question, so let me make a different view of that. So when we're talking about ActionGrid, indeed we are always working with multiple objects. So now those objects have to be hooked together. They have to have some relationship together, or else they, there's really no way to put two objects together in the same grid, because what would be the columns, of the two pieces of data. So the way we do that is we do that with one primary object and then the related objects. Now, if you don't like this style of view, you might prefer the other style of looking at data, and that is the up and down style, the vertical style, where we're showing one object like so, and then we're showing its related data, I guess, vertically underneath. So not the reading pane style, but this style where we're showing the multiple objects down below like so. And then you just, go through those as you would normally. So I'll flip that back to reading pane for a second, and then it just flips that paradigm to this other style. Now the other part of that question might have been, all about reports, and really ActionGrid, we are trying to break that Salesforce reports paradigm. So our idea is to really not do reports, and really to have more like an Excel experience where you're having a live actionable report. Okay. Somebody did ask on the questions about the summarized column feature. So I think I was over here when I had that menu. So somebody asked about this feature. So let me show that. So how does the summarized column work? So normally, if we have a financial column, any kind of numeric column, we're going to get a subtotal down at the bottom. Okay, but sometimes you might have too much data to show and you just want to do some quick math. So we emulated that feature like you see in Excel, where you select some rows. In this case, I've just got these 4 rows selected, and I choose this summarize column, and it's going to show me any numeric columns. I only have one numeric column here to show, but it'll show me a quick sum of that data. That's just an easier way to not have to export to Excel. There's a question, does the related list, so using ActionGrid as a related list, does that consume a license? And the answer to that is yes. So if you're going to use ActionGrid here, your user does need to be licensed, because of course you are adding a tremendous amount of value to their user experience, and so yeah, you would need a license to access ActionGrid that way. There is, of course, the natural question of how much does ActionGrid cost, and that is $15 a user per month. So great value to, if you could buy somebody lunch once a month and they would be tremendously more efficient, what would that look like? So I think people would do that pretty easily. And do you have volume discounting? Yes, we have volume discounting. So our volume discounting starts at 50 seats. So that's a natural question there. Does it work with custom objects? So the question was, does ActionGrid work with custom objects as well? And so indeed, ActionGrid reads any objects, custom or out-of-box objects. If you look here, you know, I might have some custom objects. You can sell these objects here or from an accounting seed integration, commercially available app from the App Exchange, but they added all these tables, and I can just click on one here, and if I do all my field chooser work, adding the fields and so forth, those are custom objects, and all the relationships around those custom objects also work. So that's really the beauty of Salesforce that allows us to integrate all of those objects, where our ability to read all of the child data from that Salesforce metadata it makes us very valuable. Somebody noticed this object and asked a question about it, and then we really will have to cut the webinar short. So somebody wanted to know what's going on with this opportunity product column. So what this is ActionGrid's unique ability to show, to flatten the Salesforce database. So what we normally have here is, if we look at this Green Bay Packers row, we normally have the data vertically. We have 3 rows of data. But commonly, users want to flatten out their Salesforce system so that they could see that one-to-many data as a column in a grid. Now that adds a lot of value, both visually, because I bet you could tell me whether this row has any data without even opening up the reading pane. So visually, you can tell that there's no data underneath there. The other value proposition that opportunity or that the child column has is in filtering, because with filtering, you can come down in here and you could say, find me all the child rows that have, for instance, an iPhone 5. On there. So this would be all the opportunities that have an iPhone 5. And notice this filtering is different than this filtering. So one of our competitors, they can only do the one or the other. So if you filter this, you really don't get all of the rows. So this is really finding the opportunities with an iPhone 5. I didn't mean I only wanted to see those rows. I could do that a different way. And then the last thing would be that I think the powerful method is this one, does not exist. Find me all the rows that do not have an iPhone 5, and then maybe do something with those, such as batch add with that data. So I take these rows here that are empty, and I might want to do something like batch add generically, batch add some products to those, and I add an iPhone 5 onto those, and maybe sell 10 of those, and put in some description, and then those rows will be added. I don't need to look at them to do it, but if I did, we can see that the 5 rows got created for those particular opportunities, and that's the opportunity product of those particular records. So I think we will need to end there, because we usually advertise this as 20 minutes, and we've gone 28 with the questions, but we like the questions. If you do need more information, just go to the Salesforce App Exchange or go to www.getactiongrid.com. You can certainly make a personal email to myself or our sales director, Shelley Jones. And if there's no more questions, we'll call that a day. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Happy action gridding.